Tennessee's the most underrated national championship contender that you need to be thinking about.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, where you can get a big return. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So, Florida State has got their new offensive coordinator, which opens a Power 4 coaching vacancy. The coaching carousel has got 3 Power 4 jobs open right now. Some names to know as that begins. All coming up on today's show, but I want to start with the Vols. Spencer, why are you starting with Tennessee? All they did was beat Vanderbilt. Did you watch the game? How much of that game did you watch? Be honest with yourself. There's no shame. Tennessee was a 10.5 point favorite. I didn't think they'd cover. They did by 2.5 points. Vegas is really good. Boy, our friends at FanDuel, very, very good as well. But Tennessee falls behind in the first 5 minutes of that game, 14-0. This is a chaotic, disastrous start. And I'm watching this going, oh my goodness, Tennessee is about to fumble, literally and metaphorically of sorts, the best opportunity to secure a playoff spot. And they're about to introduce all of the, what if they can't come back? Because what have you heard about the Tennessee offense this year? What have you heard about it? Well, they can run the ball, right? Dylan Sampson's really good. Yep, okay, yeah, we know that Dylan Sampson can do it. Well, they can't score in the first half, and they haven't thrown the ball very well. Would it surprise you to know that Tennessee did both of those things on Saturday? Spencer, they were playing Vanderbilt. That's a bowl team, first of all. Second of all, it was, while not a hugely long road trip, still not at Neyland Stadium last time I checked. Old Rocky Top wasn't blasting in the background. And Tennessee did something that I don't even think they had within them 3 weeks ago. They were trailed 14-0, came back, won the football game by 13 points. You know how? They created explosive plays in the passing game. This is what I've been waiting for. This is what I think Tennessee fans have been waiting for. And right now, there's plenty of discussion in college football about, is Miami going to get into the playoff? Not if Clemson wins. If Clemson loses, then it gets interesting. But Clemson winning makes the whole 12-team playoff picture incredibly simple. Incredibly simple for the committee, no matter what happens in the other conference championship games. But that's a different conversation. We'll have that more as the week goes on. But Tennessee, for them to do something on the last week of the regular season, they get a break now. They're not playing in the SEC championship game, so they get a bye. The playoffs start on December 20th, and Tennessee just gets to sit there and get ready, and they get to feel good. Not too good, because they know how they've been playing in the weeks prior, but they get to feel at least a little bit more confident in what they've got on the offensive side of the ball, because Nico Iamaleava had one of his best games of the year. And I am not going to retcon Vanderbilt. I'm not going to be the guy who says going into a game, I've been consistent with this all year. And I think more people should be as well, but they're not. I'm going to try my best, and I think I've done a good job so far. I am not someone who says going into a game, hey, high level of concern, hey, upset potential, hey, this could happen here. And then when it doesn't happen, go, oh, well, they should have beaten that team anyway. This started all the way back with Colorado and North Dakota State. The upset alert bells were ringing all over the place. Colorado could lose. Colorado. Oh, it's North Dakota State. It's an FCS team. Like, no, you don't get to have it both ways. Well, I'm not having it both ways. That's a good Vanderbilt team that lost to LSU on the road by just 7 points, that beat Alabama, that nearly beat Missouri on the road, and they're going to a bowl game. They're a capable team. They're not a great one, but they are capable. So I thought that they would be able, especially once they got up 14-0, I thought they'd be able to lose by less than 10.5 points. But Tennessee decided, no, let's unlock the passing game. Let's do what we have struggled to do all season long. Let's get Nico the greatest confidence boost imaginable going into a prolonged break and what will possibly end up being a home playoff game. That depends on how a couple of things shake out. But Nico ends this game 18 of 26, 257 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And coming out of this past weekend, all the attention was on the rivalry games. Understandably so. I talked about him on my reaction show. Why? It was awesome. I mean, it was just another phenomenal weekend of college football. But Alabama got the win to go to 9-3, and there's a confusing setup with them and Ole Miss and South Carolina that is a fascinating discussion. I don't want to see any of them in the playoff, but one could absolutely get in. Not if Clemson wins. Then it all gets simple, like I said. But you had Ohio State losing a game. I can't believe they lost. I cannot believe Ohio State lost that football game. The worst loss of the Ryan Day era. I mean, just a complete and total disaster for the Buckeyes. All the attention is on that. All the attention is elsewhere. Oregon's 12-0. Penn State's in the Big Ten championship game. Texas beats Texas A&M. And here's Tennessee. They're just slowly chugging along, getting better. And you know what? The SEC cupcake from last week probably helped them a bit. They put up 56 against UTEP. They shelled out some money, and in return, they got a confidence boost, and they carried that over into Vanderbilt. So Nico goes for 257 and 4 touchdowns. If Tennessee gets that out of him on a daily basis, or even just like 220 and 2 touchdowns, this is a team that can win the national championship. Because this defense is nasty. They have been all year. And Dylan Sampson is great, and they have run the ball well all year for the most part. Nobody plays a great football game for 12 weeks. Not even unbeaten Oregon plays a great football game for 12 weeks. Here are the point totals in SEC play. Let's exclude the non-conference because NC State turned out to not be that good. Kent State, Chattanooga, yes, not moving the needle for how I view a football team. In SEC play, the Tennessee defense allowed these point totals. You ready? Just remember this. 15, 19, 17, 17, 18, 14, 31 on the road at Georgia, and 23. And by the way, the defense allowed 16 to Vanderbilt. Special teams gave up a touchdown there. So I watched that Tennessee game and came away impressed that they were able to play from behind and win the game comfortably, that they were able to throw the ball, and that they put together 4 quarters of football. Yeah, they came out and got off to a horrible start. They still scored a touchdown in the first quarter. They still put up a 17 spot in the second. They led going into the half. These were the things missing from Tennessee in the last few weeks. Because I've watched that defense all year. They are phenomenally good. Phenomenally good. Even when James Pierce isn't wrecking the game, they got a bunch of other guys. Did you see the interception in the end zone? Did you see it? I hope you saw it, because that's not the first time Tennessee has thwarted a scoring opportunity by picking off the ball in the red zone, and that ends up being potentially the difference in the game. They had a red zone INT, or an end zone INT rather, against Alabama. That ended up being the difference in the game. They did it again here against Vandy. That changes the tone and tenor completely. They're really good. What they've been waiting for is the passing attack. And Nico started hitting some downfield shots. Dante Thornton, big game. 3 catches, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Chris Brazell, 5 catches, 54 yards. It doesn't have to be anything special. That's not what they've been waiting for. This is reminiscent of LSU and USC's defense from a season ago. You don't need to be creme de la creme, best of the best. You just have to be capable, because that is a defensively led team, and if the offense can just look like that, at least 80% of that, Tennessee is the most dangerous non-conference champion that'll be in the 12-team playoff this year. That's how I feel. I had them 9-3 before the year. They end up 10-2. Not bad. Vols fans didn't like me very much at the time, but here I am. I'm gassing you guys up because Tennessee deserves it. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Florida State, boy, worst preseason top 10 team ever. That's not a hot take. That's not hyperbole. That's just fact. Objective, data-driven fact. They've got a new offensive coordinator. I didn't see it coming. What is Gus Malzahn doing? Let's try to answer that question next. First, let's talk about FanDuel, where you can get ready to tackle NFL action and college football with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need. Everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. Not 2 places or 3, it's all in one place for the #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you're placing your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com, that's where you go. 150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The coaching carousel is already revolving round and around and around we go. Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles, joining me here because Gus Malzahn is your team's new offensive coordinator. Brian, I mean, this was a shocker of all shockers because Malzahn leaves a Power 4 head coaching opportunity in the Big 12 to go be an offensive coordinator in the ACC for a guy who's been a head coach for a long time now. I didn't have this on my radar at all. Your reaction to Malzahn becoming Mike Norvell's new OC?
Well, at first I was like, whoa, where'd that come from? But then I looked at, how UCF finished the year. They were lackluster. They needed a change. And Norvell and Gus have a connection at Tulsa. And they're both Southern guys. Mike was in Dallas, but he played at a small school and blah, blah, blah. They have a lot of history and connection. People they've worked with, and they both like mobile quarterbacks. So there is some fit there. But just right after the season, like immediately after the season, like that's wild. Like I did not think it would happen in that manner. Something probably didn't go well towards the end for Gus, for him to leave like that. I'll never ask him. I've met the man several times, but that tells me that the coaching carousel is what it is, because this is how this stuff happens every year. We find out the backstory 6 months later.
Yeah, I've been a Gus Malzahn fan for a while. I thought UCF would be better this year. They were a disappointing team, not among the most disappointing teams per se in all of college football, but if you were to say, hey, Spencer, list your top 15 most disappointing teams, UCF is probably in the 12 to 15 range. Like they were the only transition Big 12 team the year prior to make a bowl game. They brought in a great transfer portal class. You had a veteran quarterback who should have meshed with Gus Malzahn really well, but KJ Jefferson was a disaster. It was a complete and total afterthought when it came to throwing the football. That's where my concern is for this hire for Malzahn to go and be the offensive coordinator for Florida State. I don't have a hugely strong feeling one way or the other, but I do have that thought of like, is this a guy that has had the game kind of pass him by? Because I don't think he's the same offensive mind he would have been viewed as maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's a weird deal because like UCF is a hard place to get the high school kids to go. They've relied half portal, half high school, maybe slightly more portal. And I think that's hindered him. The amount of talent you can get at Auburn, obviously Cam Newton kind of helped a little bit at Jarrett Stidham, at Nick Marshall, guys that fit better and more defensive talent by a mile. But yeah, like the play calling and everything, everybody knows his bag. And he really hasn't adjusted it in 10 years. So everybody kind of knows what he's got coming. But like just this season, have you looked at RJ Harvey's numbers for this year for UCF? It's insane. The running back had 1,577 yards, 6.8 per tote, and 22 touchdowns on the ground. I
like that for Florida State because this is a team that should have been able to run the football, and they absolutely could not. Do you think that's his top priority coming into Florida State is we have to remind ourselves how to run the ball?
Well, to that end, yes, but their offensive line, when I say the following, I mean it. Because of how many players they're losing and how poorly they recruited high school kids at the offensive line position, I know you're sitting down, and I hope for those listening are as well. Please don't wreck your car if you're listening to this on download. They might have a worse offensive line next year.
Whoa.
I can explain why if you like, but I don't want more people
I would love to know why, because how on earth could it be worse than that?
All right. For those of you that your insurance is about to go up, note that Spencer asked for this. Their sixth-year senior center who regressed is gone. Their sixth-year senior left tackle who horrifically regressed is gone. They're going to lose one or two other offensive linemen. And out of the high school ranks, there's only one kid that's a freshman, sophomore, or junior that has showed any promise. Jalen Early got banged up towards the end of the year. He's a kid from Texas, pretty good player. But Andre Otto is another kid. He wasn't ready. He was a redshirt freshman this year. He looked really poor. Lucas Simmons as a kid was highly rated. Didn't get a play. Like they didn't use him, even though they were horrible this year. What does that say? And what's the weakest position in the portal, Spencer? What position doesn't enter in the
left
portal?
Tackle.
Right tackle, right guard, center.
I think it's offensive line and tight end. You cannot build those positions through the transfer portal. Because think about Deion Sanders at Colorado, right? When you think portal, you think about him because of what he's done the last couple of years. They have dramatically improved their defensive line.
Oh, yeah, by a mile.
Right? They brought in you can do that. But offensive line, I don't think there's a team in the country, Brian, that can say we have a premier offensive line and we just threw it together this year. We went and grabbed the ingredients at the store and we mixed it together. Like, that's a position that you can't microwave.
Years.
Yeah, you can't microwave. It's got to marinate a little bit. You got to use the crock pot.
Yeah, I agree. To that point, UCF this year, they ran the ball well, but they gave up over 20 sacks, and it's the Big 12. It's not the Southeastern. You know what I mean? Like, and they have to use the portal some.
The Southeastern Conference? You mean the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Well, no. Like any of them, like the Big 12.
Okay.
Yeah,
I thought you were having a little Freudian slip there about where you think Florida State's going to wind up.
Oh, no.
Conference wise.
I have no clue what's going to happen with that. I've given up on worrying about that because that's just a disaster with the court system. That may take years. I want no part of that conversation.
It very well could.
But as it relates to these offensive lines, you're right. And again, who's going to start for Florida State? Who's even going to be the first back? Like, I don't know if they can put together a lineup for spring practice. It's that bad. I'm not exaggerating. And Mike Norvell is on the hot seat. Who wants to go there? Like, if you're on the fringe for going to NFL, okay, I'm going to come back for a fifth-year transfer somewhere. Are you going to go attach your wagon to a guy that's on the hottest of hot seats after a 2-10 season? It's going to be rough.
So that then begs the question, why would Gus Malzahn take a demotion in title, head coach to offensive coordinator, and go to this particular spot?
Well, he likes challenges, for one. He took Arkansas State. He's been at Tulsa, etc. He's not afraid. I'll give him that. And he took UCF. A lot of people thought he was nuts there too, and they improved as a program, but at the end, they got sour again. The deal with him, though, is he's got a connection to Norvell. The culture, like where he's from, he's still got house in Alabama. He fits North Florida very well, and I think he's going to get the keys to it. I could be wrong, but that with my gut, and I have no information on this, I have a feeling things weren't too hunky-dory between him, boosters, NIL, and people because of the season this year, and he's just like, I mean, he's got more money than he can spend, so it's not about cash. He just wants to go somewhere and just be left alone. By being the coordinator, you're not dealing with the NIL very much. You're not dealing with the media. Gus is probably done with that stuff. It's kind of like Saban and some of these other guys. A lot of the older guys don't want to deal with this stuff. And I know Gus very well from the time I covered UCF. He's as A to B as it gets. Honest as the day is long. I can tell you right now, you won't meet a nicer guy. But at the same time, he just wants to coach.
Does he get Florida State back to being at least a team that can make a bowl game next year, or do you legitimately see this as another 2 to 3 years before Florida State can be relevant again?
If the O-line doesn't improve, I don't think they can. I think 6 wins is the top end because of the O-line. Like, there's just aren't enough guys, like we just discussed, Spencer. Who's going to come? I mean, I'm not kidding because I study this every day. The in-house O-line situation is iffy at best, and I mean kind. How many guys are you going to get? Because let's be honest, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, everybody, if there's a good O-lineman, even if they have guys, they'll try to get them just to keep them away from their rivals. And Florida State's NIL is not the same as Bama's, Tennessee's, Miami's, etc. So these are not good combinations. Prove me wrong, but I think they're not going to go to a bowl game next year if I had to pick because of the O-line. Now, they'll improve in other areas, I have no doubt. And I think Norvell needed to give up the play calling, which I expect Gus to do. I think Luke Kromenhoek will be the quarterback next year. They could go to the portal, but I think Luke will be the quarterback. He's somewhat similar to Jarrett Stidham. I'm not saying he's as talented, but Stidham was a guy that Auburn had that transferred in. Gus did a good job with him. He threw for over 3,000 yards in 2017. You could look at it from that perspective. He only ran for about 150 yards, but the O-line in 2017 for Auburn were a bunch of animals. They ran over people. In play action and RPO for them, oh my goodness. It was insane. Florida State gave up 8 sacks and 14 tackles for loss against a so-so Florida defense on Saturday. How do you think that's going to go?
Not well.
Next year.
Not. It can't be worse. Can't look at it that way. Can't. You would.
I guess
we're gonna find out. We'll find out. We'll find out if that will end up being worse. Brian Smith, Locked On Seminoles. Check him out on YouTube wherever you get your podcast. Brian, thanks for the time.
Thank you, sir.
We're going elsewhere around the coaching carousel. Speaking of coaches, formerly head coaches in the state of Florida, you're going to see this guy's name pop up as these jobs come open. Kind of easy to see why. That's coming up next. But first, we're talking about Game Time, which has Game Time picks. You know what that does? Game Time picks makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Why make it harder when you can make it easier? Game Time picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you're looking for. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and you can toggle their all-in pricing feature to see the total up front. No hidden fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. This coaching carousel, it's always something. Every year, the revolving door. This coach leaves, retires, or is fired, and then this guy gets hired, or he's going to move here and there, and we're just getting going. Remember, not every job that has come open is currently open, or that will come open is currently open. But do you know what job is available? As we were just discussing, Gus Malzahn, there's a head coaching vacancy in the state of Florida for a Power 4 school. Look, I'm not saying that I know this will happen. I don't even know if there's mutual interest. I don't know if Dan Mullen has any interest in being a head coach again. Maybe he likes being an analyst. I think he's pretty good on TV. But I've seen those social media posts that you've all seen out there where Dan Mullen is reposting or liking things that are pointing out how successful he was at Florida right before he got fired, and then they hired Billy Napier. So he could just be peeved about that, understandably so, and thinking to himself, that's funny, because, yeah, I don't think I should have been fired. And it got worse after I left, which, fact check, it absolutely has. So that could be the case. That could be the case. Or UCF could look at what they're trying to find, a new head coach, and see if a guy who was a head coach in the state, you think he's got a few recruiting ties, you think he's got reputation, and you're not going to a group of 5 school. You're not trying to convince him to take a major step down. Yeah, it's the SEC to the Big 12. Haven't we seen that gap, talent-wise and conference competitiveness? Haven't we seen that close this year? It's just one season, but certainly the gap is closed. UCF is not a bad job. Gus Malzahn just couldn't make it work. That doesn't mean that it can't work. There are jobs that on paper look a lot more desperate that are fine jobs. They can be the right job. You know what's not a good job? Indiana. Indiana's not a good job. Don't look at me and say that there's big money there, that there's a talent bed, a hotbed of talent for recruiting in the state of Indiana. There's some good players, sure. Yeah, absolutely. But in the state, no. Don't tell me there's a tradition of winning. Don't tell me that any of those things were true, or that you thought Curt Cignetti was going to make Indiana suddenly look like a place where you can win. Well, UCF has made it very clear. Going to the Big 12, yeah, they're in on college athletics. They want to be at the big kids table. They want to be at that sort of level. The question is, would Dan Mullen go there? Or would Dan Mullen be more interested in going to North Carolina? Because North Carolina can be a great job. I think right now it's a good job. A better one than UCF. A better one than Purdue. Those are all Power 4 jobs that are open, by the way. But to say that North Carolina is a job Dan Mullen would say, no, it's in the ACC. Why would he do that? I don't know. If you can go win there. I watched Mike Elko go from the ACC. In fact, the same state, Duke. He went there. He won. I think North Carolina historically has been a more successful football program than Duke. But hey, Manny Diaz just did a heck of a job, by the way. They had a game winner as time expired against Wake Forest. Tough way to end a bowlless season for the Demon Deacons, but a really good campaign for Manny Diaz and Malik Murphy there in Duke. Do you think that's going to get his name some more traction in head coaching circles for bigger jobs? Yeah, it will. And if Duke can attract that sort of attention, I believe North Carolina can as well. So if Dan Mullen's ultimate goal, if Dan Mullen's ultimate goal is to get himself back into the SEC and be a head coach there isn't a job that's going to come available that he can get right now. And when you've been away from the profession for a couple of years, you've got to go to a place and showcase the rest of the world. Hey, I still got it. I can still do that. You're not going to get rehired to the SEC when you haven't been a head coach in several years. I don't think the SEC is going to do that. I don't know which school would do that in the Southeastern Conference, where it just means more, as we all know. That's not going to happen. But let's say Hugh Freeze continues to struggle at Auburn. What if Dan Mullen were sitting at North Carolina with a rolling 2 to 3 year period where he's averaging 9 to 10 wins a year? Well, I think that'd make him look pretty good. Certainly it'd get him on people's radars more than it would just sitting in a TV studio and talking about football. You got to go out and actually do it at some point, of course. So would he be a candidate there? I think so. I think you see if he's interested, at the very least. I think Dan Mullen's a good head coach. You know how I know? I watched him go to 2 different spots in the SEC and win football games. Pretty good. Pretty darn good. I think you could find worse. Other names to watch for these jobs: North Carolina, UCF, and Purdue. An ACC, a Big 12, and a Big 10 job, all available right now. Barry Odom at UNLV has done a remarkable job. I'll be pretty surprised if Purdue doesn't have Barry Odom really close to the top of the list, because he went to a place, UNLV, that has been dormant my entire life and longer before that, and he has got them in the Mountain West Conference Championship game for a second straight year. He has been a head coach at a higher level school before, but he is resurrecting himself. He's not a fired head coach. This is a builder. This is a guy who has done a phenomenal job coaching. He's got a 10-win season. UNLV on Friday night plays one of the marquee games in college football this weekend. They play Boise State. Winner goes to the playoff. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Tulane, out of the discussion. Army, not going to be the highest ranked G5 champion, even if they beat Tulane in the American Conference title game. The Mountain West champ is going to the college football playoff. It's going to be Boise or it's going to be UNLV. That's the way it's going to be. For UNLV to be in that position is pretty remarkable. So Barry Odom is a guy whose name I fully expect to pop up for any of these jobs or any other jobs that could come available. Another one that's interesting is Jamie Chadwell, who's the head coach at Liberty. Now, they had a great season a year ago, and Chadwell was at Coastal Carolina, went to Liberty, won back-to-back conference championships with 2 different schools and 2 different leagues. This year, Liberty had a little bit of a letdown, but I think Chadwell is still pretty highly regarded in coaching circles. Curious to see how much traction his name gets for any of these particular jobs. Here's an interesting one, particularly for Purdue. Do you know the name Andy Kotelnicki? Maybe the most discussed coordinator move of the offseason. Last year, it was Garrett Riley at Clemson. This year, it was Andy Kotelnicki going to Penn State. The Nittany Lions, by the way, are in the Big Ten championship game. Hope you didn't miss that over the weekend. Ohio State loses to Michigan. They're not going to Indianapolis to meet Oregon. Penn State is going to be the next blue blood Big Ten program to get a crack at the Ducks. No one's knocked them off yet. It's a 3.5-point spread in favor of Oregon. Should be a really, really good football game. Those are a couple of good football teams. But Kotelnicki was widely discussed. Why? Because the Penn State offense had a clear and obvious deficiency, and it's changed. They put up 44 against Maryland. Mike Locksley didn't like it a whole heck of a lot, but they put up 44 points on Maryland. They fell behind 7-3 early on, and then Penn State went on a 41-0 run. Past Penn State offenses didn't have that. They didn't have that. So that's a guy who was a part of the rebuild at Kansas, who has elevated the Penn State offense. That's a successful track record, and he's in conference. And he's absolutely in conference. So, what I meant to say there, I got my words crossed to make an overly simple statement too aggressively. It absolutely matters to certain schools, or at least it can for athletic departments, that this guy's in the conference. He understands what the Big Ten is about. I think that can absolutely come into play for Andy Kotelnicki. Here's another name. Here's another name for the Purdue job in particular. I don't think the North Carolina or the UCF job. But the Purdue job, maybe. There are some similarities between the programs at the very least. Jake Dickert at Washington State. I think he wants to stay in Pullman. I think he loves it there. They just lost their last 3 games of the season. Now, he is a good coach. He has done a really good job since becoming the head coach up there. He's a Wisconsin native. That's Big Ten country. The Wisconsin job is not coming open. I know Luke Fickell missed a bowl game. That's disappointing for the Badgers. They're not going to move on from him. But with the Purdue job open, if you're Jake Dickert, would you go? I don't know. He seems like one of those guys that's making family-driven decisions, who wants to stay in Pullman, who wants to make it work at the small school that has given him a great opportunity, and he's shown they can win games there. But let's just say that someone's going to come calling for his offensive coordinator and quarterback this year. Ben Arbuckle, the OC, not as a head coach, but to be an OC elsewhere, and his quarterback, John Mateer, who's reportedly already got multiple NIL offers of $1 to $2 million. If those guys end up leaving, I wonder if he sticks around. I wonder. I don't know. I just wonder. So a couple names to watch. We'll see if any more interesting ones pop up. But the coaching carousel has been ignited. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.